Welcome to all Caribbean entrepreneurs. If you've been ready and waiting to take your business digital and get paid online while you sip something strong on the beach, this podcast is for you. We'll hear from the Caribbean's finest entrepreneurs on topics like e-commerce, business development, brand building, social media, their wins and failures. This is the only place in the region helping you navigate the digital age from the Caribbean's perspective. This is Digipreneur FM. And now, let's give it up for the Digiboss himself, Mr. Karan Rose.
Thank you to everybody tuning in to another episode of the Digipreneur FM podcast. And as usual, it is your boy, Mr. Rose, back again. DJ, can you fade us all the way out? Can you fade us all the way out? Because we gotta talk to the people. It is December the 7th, 2023, and this is episode number 142. How are you good people doing? I can't even imagine that is, it's crazy to me that it is December. It feels like just the other day, it was July. Like, I don't know where the months and the time has been going. It feels like 2023 was the fastest year that ever happened. Like, it just flew. Like, the pandemic flew by, but 2023 has flown by. My goodness. Anywho, how are you doing? It's always a pleasure to be able to get on the mic and talk to the Digipreneur family and the community. It's always a pleasure. And honestly, I'm kind of disappointed on one hand that, you know what? Like this year, I feel like the podcast, in terms of my output, slowed down because it definitely did. Like there was a 2-month break in the summertime because of family. Then with travel, like I haven't set myself up for travel. And you know what? And because of that, even though you see me pretty much everywhere else, you know, whether it be, you know, TV, radio, this, that, the third, you know, the podcast needs to be, you know, right there in leading the way. It needs to be leading the way. And I feel like it stopped doing that mainly because, you know, I have not set myself up to be able to do the podcast from any and everywhere. And that is one of the goals. So, a matter of fact, you know, Boxing Day is coming up. And I think my Christmas present to myself this year will be to create a podcast travel kit. Yeah, I think that's going to be, you know what? Let me write that down. Yes, because I think that is going to be my Christmas gift to myself. Look at that. Giving myself more work for a Christmas gift. And I'm being dead serious, man, because like I said, like I'm looking at, you know, it's coming out to the end of the year. My birthday is coming up, you know, December 10th is my birthday. I will be turning 37. First of all, how did we reach 37? How? I have just the other day, I was 22 and running the streets and running wild. You know, and now it's just a whole different thing, man. Like it's crazy. But yeah, like this year was amazing, because this was the first time in my life where I got to travel so much, where outside of the 2 months where my family came down, I traveled every single month. And I'm so grateful. And a lot of it, when I say a lot of it was last minute, And I'm going away again on Friday for my birthday. And just to be in a position where you're getting booked to travel, like you're getting booked, your brand is getting booked in other countries on your own strength is an amazing feeling, right? An amazing feeling. And then when it's not your brand getting booked, to be in a position to just say, yo, you know what, ma'am? Yo, we got some money, we got some time. Let's go and travel and just, not look for nobody. It's another solo trip. So this year has been, all pretty much all solo trips. Not look for nobody, just go see what's out there, book, and and organize yourself to go and get ready. So that has been an amazing thing for this year. And I see that, next year there's going to be even more travel in the books. But because the podcast is so important for me, I definitely need to go and, do some homework and create a podcast travel kit. And I think that'll be so dope as well. Because the thing is, right? I don't know about you, but I'm sure when it comes to anything that you guys, whether you're really interested in or maybe you might not be interested, I'm sure that there's something that you hype yourself up for. Either you're hyped to do it because you're genuinely hyped to do it, or you have to hype yourself up because you're not really into doing what you have to do. Like, I don't like going to the gym. I gotta hype myself up for that, right? But when it comes to my work and when it comes to building my brand and things like that, like, I do little things to like overhype myself because like not the anxiety, but the anxiousness kicks in. Like, I just can't wait to do the work. I'm not attached to any outcome, so I really don't know, how I want things to be perceived or how I want, as long as the message is not lost, that's it. But I'm not attached to the outcome, so I don't have any numbers in mind. I don't have an idea as to how I want things to go. And because I'm not attached to the outcome, I just have fun creating. I have fun playing with the tech. I have fun, making the intros. I have fun doing all these little things that hype me up, that make me want to create more and more and more and more. And just the idea of, now going online, going on Amazon, finding the best gear for me to travel with, to produce a high quality show, and to be able to do it on the road and be like, hey, this is episode number 150. We are live from Mexico City, or we're live from Bali. Or, like, to me, that's wild. And I think it's going to the energy that you're going to get when we're talking Digipreneur podcast, I think is going to be next level. You know what I mean? Like, if we're talking digital entrepreneurship, if we're trying to be digipreneurs, right? Why not create the content on the road and really showcase what being a digital entrepreneur is all about? And then for the community, what better way to be taking in the Digipreneur FM podcast than while at the airport, while you've landed a new country and it's an hour away drive to where you're going? Why not tune in? You're at a resort and you're in a hammock, you're on the beach, taking a relax, and you got the podcast in your ears. Why? That's the kind of energy I want for you. That's the energy I want for myself. So this year, the podcast took a hit because I'm set up to do everything from home, and I wasn't home a lot this year. So, when I'm looking at, what I wanted to accomplish in terms of, the amount of episodes, because since we started, we did 2 a week, right? And then this year kind of got to, 2 a month. Yeah, 2 a month. Look at that. I mean, November was 2, October 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did 6 in October, but then I overcompensated because before October, the last time I did a podcast was in July. Right? So definitely that is one of the things that I want for 2024, where I'm going to be able to go and get the tech gear required to create on the road, And I really believe that, being able to do a the Digipreneur podcast on the road, I think is going to be just a new level of energy from me that you're going to get. And I really think it's going to drive a lot of the content home. And again, I want you to be able to take in the content. And, if you're in a situation where maybe you work 9 to 5 and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, this ain't it, you want to do something else. I hope that the content gives you the energy and the motivation to go and seek better for yourself. The last thing I'll say before we get into today's topic is I want you to not be okay in situations that aren't conducive for your mental health and for your growth. If you are in a 9 to 5 job, you're in a situation where it's not the best, I want you to understand that you live in the greatest time that we've ever lived in, where now you could literally say, you know what, this ain't it. Let me go and learn a new skill online and let me go start doing that. And it can start off as just side income. And then it can grow into something else. Like me and another digital entrepreneur, right? Shout outs to Celine. Me and her, we've gotten cool just by just talking about how we've created our lives. In terms of what we do, in terms of freelancing, in terms of, the things that we do, the services we are, like we've gotten really cool over conversations about the lives that we've created. And we were in a conversation yesterday just talking, and she's like, yo, I don't understand how people are so comfortable with just complaining about the situation. And then when they'll reach out, they want to talk, they want your advice, they want help, whatever. And you could sit down and give the entire blueprint, talk people through things, encourage them. But a lot of people are just okay with just being in the situation that they're in and complaining. And then they watch you and pre-you. They watch you and they make passive aggressive remarks. They say things that just don't make no sense. That's not this community, but I know we could all relate to it, right? Anybody listen to this podcast, is people that are trying to do better. But I just want to throw that back out there that, if you're not happy with the situation that you are in, you don't have to stay there. You live in a time period now where you can learn skills online. You can get certified. You can get internationally recognized certifications and start working for companies around the world. You can start to pick up clientele around the world. You're not limited to the current situation that you are in. You are not limited to the jobs in your country anymore. And most importantly, you're not limited to the income that you are presently making. And I need you to understand that. Because if more people did, the Caribbean region on the whole would be much better off, because there would be much less people complaining and watching you and talking garbage. There'd be much less people that are resorting to a life of crime, because a lot of these folks don't want to do it. They just feel like they have no other choice. They feel like they don't know any other way. Right? If more people were able to do what they love, we would be in a much, much happier place as a region collectively. And I think that is the perfect segue into today's topic, because what we're going to discuss today is we're going to discuss a lady who I've had the pleasure of meeting in like the end of 2019. We got really close over the pandemic, and I'm happy to be somebody that we can, we can call each other friends, and this is somebody that I highly respect. This is somebody that I look up to. And this is somebody that always has me with my pen in hand, making notes. Because not only are they always dropping gems, and the funny thing is that when they're dropping all these gems, a lot of the times, I'm not even listening for the gems. I'm looking at how they're putting it all together. So I'm taking so they could be doing things, dropping gems, and I might not be listening to the gems coming out of her mouth, but I am watching how she's putting everything together, and I feel like there's just so much more in learning from this woman when you're studying her and you're watching the things that she's doing, how she's putting these things together. And that person is none other than Dr. Terri-Karelle Reid. Now, the topic for today is her Redirection podcast. She just wrapped up season 2, right? She just wrapped up season 2, and the podcast is doing some amazing things, right? Now, I had written an article about the Redirection podcast because, again, whilst the words that come out of her mouth, are amazing, and there's a lot of gems there, I don't think a lot of people really sit down and step away from the front of the show. So she'll be on stage, and I don't think enough people step away from being in the audience. I don't think enough people put themselves, behind the stage, on stage with her and taking notes. How did she walk out? Why is she wearing this? Why is she doing this? Why is she doing that? I really think if you take time to study how she's doing, she is the best example to me in the Caribbean of how to build a brand that doesn't require you to be in sports, doesn't require you to be in entertainment, doesn't require you to sell sex, doesn't require you to be naked. She is the best example of that. And the fact that she is global. And when I mean global, Homegirl is global. The opportunities she gets are global. The people she works with are global. She has outgrown the Caribbean region. Now, granted, she's in the right country because, Jamaica pays her very nice. She's in the perfect market. She's in the perfect country in the Caribbean when it comes to business and whatnot. But she has been able to build this global brand, and because of that, it's just insane to watch the things that she is doing. Now, I want to take you back to 2020. So me and Dr. Terri-Karelle Reid, we connected. She was actually a client at that point in time, which is wild, to me. But we connected because she wanted to redo her website. And I got to go back in our chats because I don't even think that was the original reason as to why we connected. I think we connected and then it kind of turned into that, right? I was looking at, we had connected. I can't remember what the original conversation was, but we had connected. We enjoyed each other's work. She would comment and she'd let me know she liked my work. I would let her know, I really like what she's doing. And we got cool. And then I remember checking out her website, and I remember checking out, just her website and how some of the things was built. And I was like, I think you're way too big for your website to not reflect how big you are. And I kind of broke it down for her, and she's like, wow, didn't even think of it like that. And so we ended up working together where I was coaching her how to build her own website. And we scrapped the old website and I coached her on how to build her own website. So the website that you guys see, Terri-Karelle.com, that is the website that we worked on together. And she built it herself, right? I did not touch nothing. She built everything herself. I just coached her and taught her how to do it. And I think from then, I knew that this girl was different. Now, remember, this is the pandemic. Everything locked down. She's not doing events. Remember, her main thing is event hosting, right? Master MC, Chief Experience Officer. And what was going on at that point in time was that nothing was happening. So she had the time. So it was the perfect time to kind of rebuild the digital assets, build up the mailing list, the notifications list, get set up the analytics platforms and all that good stuff, and then just rebuild the platform, right? And I think what stood out to me from then was she'd always have homework, right? And every time I tell her, okay, and you're coaching people, you don't want to overwhelm anybody, but you give Terry 3 things to do, okay? For our next session, you're going to do bam, 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 those 3 things. Terry would stay up the entire goddamn night, and I'd be sleeping. Now, remember, I usually wake up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd be now waking up, and Terry's messaging me at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, I know you said only do these 2 or 3 things, but I spent all night doing research, and I did these 10 things. And you're like, what? And everything that you gave her to do, she just overdid it. And overdid it in a good way. She's enough. She's excessive. But in a good way. And because she spent so much time researching and reading, and her thing was always, I want to research and read before I come to you and ask you a question. And she's not afraid to experiment. So the website became like just an amazing project because it was, you're learning, and she's learning the importance of the website within her brand. And even to this day, she utilizes it tremendously for a variety of different things for her brand, right? And that kind of started off, where I thought, okay, this girl different. Because she's not just taking anything for granted. Like, she's putting in the work. She's willing to put in the work. She's willing to experiment. She is willing to think much bigger than, what we're talking about. So she's a very forward-thinking individual, all right? Now, in those conversations, right? In those sessions, I remember telling her, Terry, there's one thing that I think you could do that would make this, that would take your brand to a whole nother level, given who you are and what you do. And she's like, what's that? She's like, I think it's time you do a podcast. And she damn near fainted. Because she's like, with the website, you're telling me to blog, you're telling me to send email, you're telling me to do this, now you're telling me to do podcasts. She's like, I can't take you in. I can't take you in. I can't take you in. She's like, you know what I'm going to call you from now on? Just one more thing. Terry, I like? Just one more thing. Because every time I talk to you, by the time the conversation is done, I have just one more thing to do. Don't kill me on my Yardie accent, right? But yeah, from then I was like, the podcast makes so much sense because of what you do. And I think that would be an amazing space for you to, because you're already on Instagram all the time, doing videos, dropping gems, sharing with the public. A podcast makes the most sense. And the thing is that I'm not trying to take credit. I'm just trying to say a seed was planted, but you never know how this thing is going to play out. So even though I was telling her from then, the podcast would make the most sense for her, given everything she's already doing, right? And she doesn't have to, and the thing is, right? I was telling her, you could do the podcast, just get a mic, record. I'm like, you don't even have to worry about over editing and, just people just want to hear you, right? And she was like, I'll think about it. Okay? Now, I did not know that the think about it would result into what actually happened. Because Terry went away. Well, not really, not physically, but we finished the website. And then, man, it might have been like 6 months later or 7 months later, whatever. Terry sent me a message and said, check this out. And homegirl sent me the intro to her podcast. And there was podcast art. The podcast intro was produced. It was original music. I'm like, yo, what the hell? I'm like, yo, I was just telling you to, just grab a mic and just start to talk or whatever. But yo, homegirl went and she ended up creating Redirection podcast, which was totally different than anything else that she was doing. So even though I was saying, just start a podcast, take the things that you're already talking about on your socials, but just turn that into longer form content on podcasts, homegirl went and she sat down and she planned out a way bigger vision than, again, I could have never have seen that coming. And when I learned what Redirection was about, finding people, these diamonds in the rough, these people that, a podcast that she's going to be interviewing people that people don't necessarily really know about, everyday, regular people, and getting their stories and talking to people about redirection, listening to their stories, getting them to the point of rejection, and then getting to the point of redirection and how their life has changed. Regular people. And it was just very different from anything that she has been speaking about in her social media platforms. And the concept was amazing. The intro, amazing. Just listening to it and hearing where the podcast was going, amazing. And then she would record the episodes via, I think she was using Zoom at the time. This is like 2020, right? She recorded the episodes, she interviewed everybody, and it was just so well done, and it was so well produced. She worked with people to produce the podcast, and again, I was just like, man, this is insane, all right? It was really, really good, and the reception was really, really good, all right? Now, she does the first, I think it was like 11 episodes or whatever. I think season 1 was like 11 or 12 episodes. The feedback was amazing. Numbers are really good, right? But then we don't hear from Terry. Let me see, right? We don't hear from Terry from 20, and I'm not going to lie to you, I'm pulling up the data. Her last episode was December 31st, 2020. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got 6 episodes in 2021, right? And then we don't hear from Terry until 2023. All right? We don't hear from her till 2023. July 8th, 2023. Tamar McKenzie, Power of Healing. So we had spoken about the podcast. Yo, what's going on? You got to build your own space. You're building up everybody else's space and da-da-da-da. And she was like, but time. And I was like, okay, all right, cool. I mean, you're busy, Meanwhile, me ain't know she was cooking up all this heat. I didn't know she was cooking up what season 2 was looking like. And you see, and nothing before it's time. Because I'm sure if I asked Terry, because we're having an interview with her on the digital world coming up, I'm sure I'm going to ask her this, when you did season 1 in 2020, you had a couple of episodes in 2021, everything that went into season 2, did you have access to all those resources or people at that point in time, or these people that kind of came on afterwards to help you build what turned into season 2? I'd love to know, because sometimes the delays, they happen, but it delays because you know what? There's something better for you. And what made season 2 so successful and what made season 2 become a masterclass is what I want to dive into. So let me just talk about some of the key stats of the Redirection podcast, and then I'm going to lay out 5 of my observations as to what made season 2, or what has made the podcast on the whole so successful. So for starters, right? Terri-Karelle has 37 episodes in total. She has a 4.9 rating with over 300 reviews of the podcast. This is what kills me. Terri has been listened to in over 107 countries. And at the time of recording this podcast, Terri has 104,000 downloads of the podcast, with over 128,000 views on YouTube for season 2. And just so you have an understanding of the reach of this podcast, Terri has people that are listening from countries like Kenya, Japan, Luxembourg, Nigeria, Colombia, United Emirates, Hong Kong, Romania, Russia. Imagine people taking time out of Russia from what they're doing over there and listen to the podcast. Brazil, Portugal. I don't know if it's called Oman or Oman. And there's so many more countries that have tuned in. All right. So the reach has been insane. All right. Philippines. All right. Germany. Mexico. Martinique. Australia. These are places that she's getting traffic in, right? And then the Redirection podcast, again, at the time of recording this episode, is currently ranking on 26 charts on Apple Podcasts around the world. In all of the countries that the podcast is ranked on, there are also no other Caribbean podcasts even close to her on the charts. And I'm going to pull up the actual charts just so you can get an idea as to what the rankings are looking like, right? So when you are podcasting, you have to select what categories you are in, right? So for me, my podcast is in the business and entrepreneurship podcast. Terry's podcast is in personal journals and society and culture, all right? So she is ranking in Luxembourg for personal journals. She is ranking, so just caveat. So you pick the 2 categories that you want your podcast to fall into. So those are the 2 categories you're going to rank for on Apple Podcasts. And the third category is going to be all podcasts, where all podcasts they're just ranking what is the best, the highly most downloaded, viewed podcasts on Apple Podcasts in each country, right? So she's ranking for personal journals in Luxembourg. She's ranking for all podcasts in Trinidad and Tobago. She's on the charts for society and culture. She's the number 4 podcast in personal journals right now in Trinidad. Look at this, Jamaica. She has the number 10 overall podcast. She is number 1 for society and culture and number 1 in personal journals. She's ranking in Bahamas. She's ranking in Namibia. Look at this. She's the number 10 podcast for personal journals in Namibia. She is, where else we go? We go in Barbados, she's ranking. She's ranking in Cayman Islands, Guyana, Dominica, Turks and Caicos, St. Vincent, St. Kitts, Grenada. And all of those countries she's ranking for the society and culture category. She's ranking for the personal journals category. And then she is ranking in the all podcasts category. Let me pull up Jamaica, right? So Jamaica, like I said, she's at number 10. So these are remember, Jamaica's a big-ass market, right? So these are the top 10 podcasts in Jamaica. This is the all podcasts, right? Remember, We might not have a lot of people creating podcasts, but the consumption rate of podcasts throughout the entire Caribbean is massive, right? So I'm just throwing that out there because that's something that people, kind of, they reach out to me and ask me, are people really listening to podcasts in the Caribbean? Yes, they're consuming them a lot, and they're consuming them more as an alternative to radio. But we don't have a whole ton of people creating podcasts, and when they do, they kind of flame out, or they're not putting the right energy into it to make it a successful thing. So these are the top 10 podcasts in Jamaica right now. Number 1 is Shits and Gigs. 2 is Joel Osteen. Number 3 is Stephanie Sue and Ramble, called Rotten Mango. 3rd is East Coast Radio Podcast, African Story Magic with I can't even say it, Sina Lofi. Pray.com, Sleep Psalms with Bishop T.D. Jakes. Then we have On Purpose with Jay Shetty at number 6. Ashley Legs, Slay Girl, Slay 7, the BTS podcast. Number 9 is Habits of a Goddess. And number 10 is Terri-Karelle Reid's Redirection. She is the number 10 overall podcast in the big market that is Jamaica. And when I scroll down, right, I'm scrolling down, I'm at number 30 right now. I'm looking to see, is there any other Caribbean podcasts even close? I'm at number 50, Bible Before Breakfast with Mildred Kingsley. There's still no other. I'm scrolling through, looking through in the top 100. So I'm looking at the top 100 podcasts right now for Jamaica in all categories. There's no other Caribbean podcasts in the Apple Podcasts rankings. Terry's the only one, and she is number 10. Number 1 for personal journals, number 1 for society and culture. So I want you to understand just how amazing of a feature that is. And because Jamaica is a big market, Jamaica's tough. Usually I rank in the business category and entrepreneurship category. But you see, the all podcast category for Jamaica, I've probably ranked in that like a handful of times, right? I think the closest I've gone was I broke top 20, I think once. It's a hard market to break into, right? Especially in the all podcast category. So whenever I am ranking on the Jamaica charts, I'm always grateful because I know how hard it is to rank in that. So let me break down my 5 observations as to why this podcast became so successful. So number 1 is community. Terry has been building her community, fondly known as the TK Tribe, for years. And she has built and protected this community, sharing her stories, showcasing snippets of her life, and giving you the gems that she has learned over the years, and inviting the audience along for the ride, or the community. The community was built not to go out and get followers or sell them products. And that's the most important thing. She built the community as a safe space to share, connect, to educate, and have fun. Terry's not trying to sell her followers anything. You don't have to tune in to Terry's content and feel pressured to buy something. And that's key, because when Terry does introduce a person, when she introduces a product, when she introduces a business, it's so wholesome, because like, look at her and Brichet. She not only likes the products, but she loves the people behind the products, and we've gotten to learn about them and who they are. And so when, you see her Brichet everything, right? When you see her Brichet everything, you see that it's more than just the product, because anybody can make a bag. You could buy good bags from anywhere. But the energy behind the owners of Brichet, the story behind how they've built Brichet, put all that together, and you feel it in the content. And when she does talk to them or show it to you online, you feel it, and then that's what makes people want to to follow, go check out the brand. You're not feeling like you're being sold to. She's not selling you Brichet. All right? So anytime she does introduce a brand, a product, you know that this is something that she believes in so much that she's willing to share it to the community, because all the good stuff that she likes, she keeps to herself. That's her business. She keeps to herself. She's not trying to sell you anything. All right? And that has allowed her to remain pure in her content and have the audience feel like, yo, we're just here. This is a safe space. We're never going to be sold anything. And if we're learning about a business or a brand, it's deeper than just a product. And you go out and you really feel like, man, I really want to go support these people. Or, hey, that's a really good product. I want it for myself. All right? And so because of all that, over the years, the tribe has grown into loyal supporters from countries all around the world. The second reason why this podcast became so successful is inclusion. Inclusion was the order of the day. So season 1 of the podcast was a success by all accounts, but Terri and her team went to work on how they could make this even more successful. And because we know she's an advocate for inclusion, she decided to shoot a video podcast. So season 1 was just audio only, but obviously, you know, she's big on the deaf community. She can sign, she can speak multiple languages, right? She decided that she would include the deaf community in the project. And so for those who wanted the audio only, that option was there for you. You could go listen to it on any podcast platform. But when you went over to YouTube, she shot videos for every episode. So she had a set, she shot the videos, and she brought in an intermediary interpreter by the name of Antoinette Tony Aiken. And she signed every single episode. So she was superimposed and she signed every single episode. How many people do you know have YouTube content, and outside of closed captions, how many of them have somebody doing sign? So she made sure that Tony was a part of the project, and she had Tony there signing. All right? And I think that made it even better, because when you're reading the captions, right? I mean, if you can't hear, you don't get to feel or hear the passion. And while they could read it through closed captions, the reason why she brought Tony is because Tony pretty much embodies every single word. She's one of the Jamaica's top intermediary interpreters. All right? And it's because she can give you that emotion. And I think Tony captured that. So if you are part of the deaf community, I believe you got to feel the stories. So you got to watch it, but you also got to feel the pain and the emotion of everybody, right? The third thing that made this so successful, and this is me looking at the podcast as a digital strategist. Forget me being cool with Terri, right? This is me looking at her as a digital strategist and critiquing it. The short form content. So the redirection moments, as they were called, were short clips that were aimed to take key points from each episode and turn them into content for TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. So this allowed people to get bite-sized, digestible content to drum up interest to go and check out the longer form episodes. Why is that important? You know who the most successful podcast is in the world? It is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has 2 YouTube channels. Joe Rogan has the YouTube channel for the 3-hour episodes he does, and Joe Rogan has the YouTube Clips channel. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and make 2 YouTube channels, but that allowed him to build a entire separate and apart platform for people who just wanted the straight up clips, like it's only clips, and then you have the people that want the long 3-hour video podcasts. So what Terri did was she did it in IG Reels formats, and she was able to distribute them across TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. And YouTube Shorts is huge because YouTube Shorts is a part of the search engine, so the short form clips are searchable via Google as well. YouTube Shorts is also monetizable as well. So she can get paid off of YouTube Shorts. So that was a stroke of genius. So those bite-sized clips, you got key moments. Those were also sponsored moments from Heineken, right? So that was a great way to include another sponsor as well, to sponsor those clips. And then you got to distribute those clips, and that allowed people to be like, oh, wow, I need to go and check out the full episode of this. All right? So the short form clips was pure fire and genius. And that's really what you want to be doing. When you have long form content, you want to be breaking it up and distributing it so that way you can drive traffic back to the long form content. The fourth reason what made this podcast successful to me was adding of the video content. So whilst the audio podcasts were amazing, they have the highest completion rate of all content types, right? Since people can passively consume podcasts while doing other things, the video format allowed Terri to introduce a captivating set that added another dimension to the visuals. It also paved the way for you to see the real and raw emotions of all the guests, making for heart-wrenching content. So the audio podcasts were great. We love it. You get to listen to it on the road. But having the visuals, she was able to brand her set. The set was her brand colors. It was red. It was designed in Terri's image. That is a very similar design to what she had for her book launches. It's a similar design for this set of Redirection. So again, all falling in line with Terri's brand. If you go back and watch her photos from her book launch, the set is very similar in style because that's Terri's brand. And even her her sets have a brand style. Okay? So the video format allowed her to have a set, allowed us to see the guests, see the emotion, feel the emotion. She had multiple camera angles. It made for great TV. It felt like TV. That is why I feel like, listen, who knows where this podcast goes next? I'll say that. Who knows where this podcast goes next, right? But it made for great content. It felt like I was watching TV. And the fifth observation that I will say is the angle. The angle made this podcast so successful. Great content is all about having a unique angle or perspective that makes you different from the market. Terri-Karelle could have easily have gotten the Jamaican Prime Minister, Mr. Andrew Holness, on the podcast. That is her brethren. She could have called him and be like, yo, Agwan, come true, PM. So she could have gotten him on the podcast if she really wanted to, but her angle was to find real people that you may not have heard about, but are doing amazing things, who have an amazing story of redirection. All of her guests are from a wide cross-section of society. Young, old, in between, male, female, students, professionals, in between jobs, career people, and people traversing other unexpected circumstances. So because that was the angle of the podcast, it made for amazing content. It made for amazing content. And then, right, and these are just some bonuses, but the next factor I believe that was going to make the season a success was that it was mission-driven. Terri-Karelle, before she even started filming and got any sponsors, she had pledged support for Eve for Life Jamaica before she got any sponsors, as I said. So she set out to donate to them $150,000. And then when Heineken 0.0 came on board as a sponsor, they agreed to match her pledge and donated $150 as well. So she was able to donate $300,000 for Eve for Life Jamaica. And then Toyota Jamaica, that's been one of her long-standing sponsors and partners and collaborators. When they jumped on, they also they paid for the sign language as well, because it fell in line with their mandate of mobility for all. So when you put all of these things together, I believe that is what made this podcast to this point so successful, and it is now currently the most successful podcast coming out of the Caribbean region. Can we get a bang, 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 connect? Terry's Redirection podcast is the most successful podcast coming out of the Caribbean region. That to me is amazing. Seeing what it has been able to do, seeing that she did not compromise on any of her values, she sold out on nothing. Everybody, from the sponsors to the people that she worked with, everybody aligns perfectly with Terry's brand. And I also want to give out a major, major shout out to the man behind the scenes, Sir Alex Sterling. Because, boy, listen, everything about Terry aligns with who she is and her brand. And I don't think she could have ever have found a better number two. And when I look at Terry and I look at Alex, the last time we were together, I was like, you know who you guys remind me of? Terry is Iron Man, but do you know who Iron Man had right there with him through every single thing? Whether it be in the lab, whether it be on missions. You know who was right there with Iron Man in everything? Jarvis. Terry is Tony Stark. Alex is Jarvis. And everything Terry needs, Alex is right there. Just like Jarvis was there for Iron Man through every single thing. So this is what happens when you have your values, you build your brand, you know what you're about, you don't compromise. Everything starts to align. All right? The world begins to conspire to give you everything you need to fulfill your mission. And while she has a great support system, Scoops, Nike, King Garfield, you know, Alex right there with her they're just a perfect combination. And I really enjoy watching them work to the point where I'm like, yo, how do I get an Alex? And it's funny because that's a compliment that Alex has been getting. How did people will go up to Alex and be like, yo, Alex, how do I get me an Alex? Like I need an Alex. Not an assistant, not an executive liaison. I need Alex. How do I get me where are they selling the Alexes? You know, and I feel that way too. I feel like I need to go and get me an Alex. I don't know. I gotta get me an Alex. It's dope being able to be a digipreneur and a solopreneur and do all these. I need to get me an Alex. That might be my goal for 2025. Who knows? But anyways, I wanted to just break down what made this podcast so successful, and it continues to feel like Terry is just getting started. I don't think Terry she's still on the come up. And that's the crazy part. She's still on the rise. She's still on the come up. This isn't it. All right? This isn't the heights. This isn't the peak as yet. It still feels like Terry is just getting started. And so for me, the part that I really enjoy is watching her work, being able to be a part of bits and pieces of the journey, but also being able to kind of sit back and watch, not from the audience, but being able to watch from behind the stage or on the side of the stage and just watching the production and watching how all of the systems and nuts and bolts are all being built. Because for me, that is where I learned so much from Terry. It's all of these little things that I see Terry do that I'm like, oh, wow, didn't even think of this like this. Or, damn, maybe I should do this, you know? And she will joke and be like, I don't know what you're learning from me. We out here learning from you. We want to know how you're doing what you're doing. I'm like, don't watch that. I'm watching you. So it's great for me to see somebody who is uncompromising, who is relentless in her goals, and she's achieving it all while being from the Caribbean, living in the Caribbean, and generating global opportunities right from here, right? Getting global recognition for her work, getting into global spaces right from here, all without having to compromise, get half naked, sing and dance, shook and jive. I mean, unless she wants to. She'll bust out a move here and there, unless she wanted to. But she doesn't have to do that. And that is what has made Redirection, the podcast, so successful. So, folks, what did you think of today's episode? And if you haven't checked out Redirection Podcast, I will link to it in the show notes so you guys can go check out Redirection by Terri-Karelle. It's an amazing podcast. All right? Get your napkins and tear and be prepared to cry a little bit. But even if you're taking in Terri-Karelle, and if you're somebody who, the content doesn't resonate for whatever reason, no problem. Take in Terri-Karelle and watch the moves that she is making and see what you can do to tweak in your own game. I'm not telling you to copy her. You're never going to be able to copy her. Not even if you tried. But you can look at what she is doing and you can take things and work them into your brand because she is a walking masterclass. The podcast was a masterclass in podcasting, but Terri on the whole is a walking masterclass in building a brand from the Caribbean and taking it global. So that is it from me for today's episode. If you enjoyed the Digipreneur FM podcast with your boy, the Digiboss, please drop a rating on the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Rate the podcast. If you really enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to drop a review of the podcast, all right? The reviews help grow the podcast, so when people are tuning in from around the world, they're going to look at the reviews first to see if they want to even listen to it. So drop a review if you really enjoyed today's episode, all right? And then you guys can go and follow me over at Keron Rose, KeronRose, on all social media platforms. I'm most active on LinkedIn and on Instagram, TikTok. I'll be doing my thing over there too. And then you can learn more about building your digital presence and monetizing your platforms on KeronRose.com. And you can stay up to date with all things happening in the podcast on Digipreneur.fm. Links to both websites are going to be in the show notes. So that is it from me today, folks. I might squeeze one more episode in for my birthday, but if I don't, feel free to reach out and say happy birthday, Digiboss, on December the 10th. The boy turning 37, and I'm traveling. This is the first time I'm traveling for my birthday. So when you see me on socials acting a fool, I don't know, maybe not. I don't know yet. I don't know what my vibe is going to be when I go in and hit the next country. I don't know. But when you see me on socials, just know I'm having fun. I'm having fun. I'm living my best life. I'm living the life that I have created, and I'm enjoying myself. And I can't wait to come back and talk to you guys again. I might try to squeeze one more in, but if I don't, just wish your boy happy birthday, December 10th. That's it. Enjoy and take care.
You've been listening to the Digiboss, Keron Rose. We hope your notepad was filled after this episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. The learning doesn't stop, folks. And to make sure you don't miss any gems from the Digiboss, go over and follow him on all social media platforms at Keron Rose. Folks, don't just sit there with a notepad. We need you to implement at least one thing into your business before the next episode. That's the only way your business levels up. Thanks for listening to Digipreneur FM. Now go be great.